101. We're doing this because we have our online and hybrid classes. So college can be, search can be really difficult at this time. So we wanted to do some things that could help out with that. One of the things we did, we have something for the students during the day. And of course, they have different questions and maybe some different interests than what parents do. And so we wanted to have that separate. So we wanted to then have this tonight so that we could introduce the parents and have the parents being able to ask questions for that. With that, we'll introduce our presenters. We have Emily from St. Ambrose. Emily, you want to say hi?
Yeah, hi everybody. Thanks again, Mary, for hosting.
And then we have Rachel from Augustana.
Hi, I'm Rachel. Nice to meet everybody. Thank you.
And then we have Marcus from University of Iowa.
Hello, good evening. Marcus from University of Iowa. Welcome. Glad you all are here. Looking forward to the conversation.
Okay, and we're going to go ahead and get started. Emily, I think that you should be able to share the screen. Do you want to go ahead and pull up the presentation and we'll go ahead and get started? Can you do that? Okay. Oh.
We should have some music playing while we transition here. It's always the fun part.
It is. All right, perfect.
And I'll make it just a little bit larger for everybody. Is that better?
Yes.
Okay.
Great.
Perfect. Welcome again, everybody. My name is Emily. I'm a senior admissions counselor with St. Ambrose University. So any families or students that will be looking at St. Ambrose University, I will be working with your family and your students specifically. We also have Marcus and Rachel with us. If you guys want to add anything about University of Iowa or Augustana, feel free.
Sure. So I'm one of the assistant directors in the Office of Admissions. I've been in college admissions for about 8 years. I worked about 4 years on the private side and about 4 years here at the University of Iowa. So I love my job. I love just being a resource for families.
Yeah. And I'm Rachel Gustafson. I'm one of the associate directors of admissions at Augustana. And I graduated from Augustana a couple decades ago. And I've been in admissions almost 30 years. So I've been doing this a while. And I too love it. Augustana changes lives, and it's great to have a front seat for that. And I work with students specifically from the Illinois and Iowa Quad Cities, so would welcome working with any of your students. I do have a daughter who's a junior at Rock Island High School, so I'm going through this all from a parent perspective for the first time too, so learning a lot that way as well.
Perfect. Thanks, guys. Just kind of getting into it, whether you're a parent going through it the first time with their oldest student or a parent who maybe has done this a few times, I just like to give a refresher of the types of institutions that there are. The first one being a university. So that's going to be similar to the three that we'll be speaking about today a little bit more. University of Iowa, Augustana University, and St. Ambrose University. They can be private or public institutions. And they can be any, range of sizes as well. So, for example, St. Ambrose is around 3,000 and University of Iowa is, Marcus, you'll have to correct me, around 25,000.
25 for undergrad, about 32,000 total.
Awesome. So it's going to vary, as you guys can see. A university, what makes it a little bit different than a college is that there's multiple colleges within it. So your student will, maybe be in the College of Business, like the Tippie College of Business at University of Iowa, the Center for Health and Human Services, or the College for Health and Human Services or Education, like physical therapy and occupational therapy at St. Ambrose. And then it is going to be comprehensive in the fact that we will also maybe offer master's or doctoral programs as well. Colleges typically will have those freestanding majors, offer a lot of majors, but they will either have no or few graduate programs. So that's just the difference there. If you have a student that's maybe looking to go on to a graduate program of some sort, start maybe with universities. You can also look at colleges, but universities might more likely will have maybe that master's or doctoral program that you're looking for. A lot of colleges do also have great programs, like a plus program. So maybe they have the undergraduate degree and they work really well with a master's or a doctoral program at a comprehensive university. So for example, I'm sure Augustana has some, but we have partnerships with Palmer College and chiropractic. So that way our students can go on and do chiropractic. And then we also have pre-law where we do a 3+3 with University of Iowa. So again, just kind of keep those things in mind as you're looking through the college search process with your students. And then lastly, the technical and professional programs. These will typically be offered through a community college or junior college is what we like to call them as well. And those are going to be more on certificate basis. You can also get some professional development through JUCO and community college as well. So if you have a student that's maybe looking to go into a technical field, start with those community colleges, start looking there. I know Kelsey for Eastern Iowa Community College would be a great person to start reaching out to. I believe she spoke with some of your students not too long ago. So definitely reach out to her if you have any questions about technical or professional programs as well. Kind of getting a little bit more into the institutional size. For example, I already mentioned St. Ambrose and Augustana are going to be on the smaller side of universities. Colleges are also typically a little bit smaller in size. This typically offers just a variety of different opportunities, not better, not worse than a larger or a medium-sized university, just different. So it really depends on what your student is looking for when they're going through the process. You'll have all kinds of numbers thrown at you, like student to professor ratio, average class size. The one thing to keep in mind is really mainly focusing on what your student, the environment that your student thrives in. So if they're okay with lecture halls, or, you know, they're very independent or self-sufficient and they can get through, or they thrive in having larger communities, go visit University of Iowa or Iowa State. Sometimes they have, you know, more, you know, better programs in terms of like just larger programs, larger faculty. So there are going to be pluses and minuses to all different institution size. Same with St. Ambrose. If you have a student who's looking to go into the health sciences, just for example, we have a human cadaver lab on campus, and if they're wanting to be very hands-on before going into like pre-med, into a medical field, they do get a lot of one-on-one, being able to study human anatomy, and then get a lot of time with their professor as well. So I'll let, I guess, Rachel speak a little bit more about small and maybe Augustana, and then Marcus can talk about the pros too of looking at a larger university.
Sure. Augustana is actually about 2,500 students, and we do have mostly undergraduate programs. So the advantage of that is that students really get to be the focus of the faculty right from the start. They get to take advantage of the opportunities that are there on campus. As freshmen, the same as they would have as upperclassmen. So our average class size is about 18, and our student to teacher ratio is about 11:1. So definitely a lot of that personal connection, mentorship that happens at a smaller school. And then Marcus, do you want to talk a little bit about the size of the medium and large regents?
Sure. So University of Northern Iowa is a little bit under 12,000 students. So it's the smallest regent schools out of the three. The University of Iowa, it's around 32,000 total students, and then Iowa State, approximately 36,000, which is the largest of the three regent institutions. Pretty much what Emily mentioned earlier, the larger institutions will offer graduate programs, most likely masters, and also PhD programs. And so it is an environment pretty much where you have to be a little independent. For example, University of Iowa, we do have some large lecture halls. It can be 300 to 400 students. Not all classes are like that, but those are on our campus. And so for those students who are not necessarily motivated to self-motivate themselves in class, this can be a challenge. You can somewhat hide in a large lecture, right? You can sit in the back row and the professor is really going to be focusing more so on the students who are in the first several rows. So keep that in mind. And it is a larger environment. And so if your child is a student who has, may have a challenge of navigating larger environments, that could pose a challenge, because we do treat students as young adults, and there's not necessarily going to be, I'm not saying hand holding, but there's going to be support there. But some professors will not know students on a first name basis. Some will. So with larger institutions, the professors, their primary focus is on research. That's a plus and a minus. Most of the time, the ones who are focusing on research may not have as much time to work with you individually as in a small institution. But if you're able to connect with a faculty member with the research, they can be a valuable mentor for you as well. And so with these larger schools, there's the big time sports, so if you're a student, if you have a student who just loves not Pac-12, but Big Ten and Big 12 sports, then, Iowa State, are for you as well. So there's pros and cons to it. It's a big environment. It's a lot to offer in terms of academics and support services, but at the same time, it's gonna be a challenge trying to navigate that environment.
Now, Marcus, one of the things that I hear all the time is that transferring from starting out at Scott Community College and then transferring for those students that maybe need that smaller class sizes to get started. But what I hear is the concern of getting that college experience. Can you address that a little bit?
The college experience from the community college side?
Yes, and then transferring. How does
Yes.
that work for that?
Yeah, so for transfer students, transferring from a 2-year to a 4-year, the big piece is that student experience, right? So coming in as a freshman at the University of Iowa, yes, that college experience is so critical for some students, and sometimes students may be behind a little bit if they transfer from a 2-year to a 4-year, for example, and so they're a little bit behind in terms of connection with faculty, a little bit behind in terms of getting connected on campus, and they're coming to this entirely new environment. And by the time they kind of get acclimated to campus, like those 2 years are up, right? And they're looking to graduate. So there's something said about starting at a four-year institution where you can really immerse yourself, in that environment, from a student life perspective. And for your 4 years, you can, as you matriculate through, you can really grow and really advance in those organizations. So for example, you come in as a freshman, you're kind of brand new, eyes open. You want to get involved with like Dance Marathon, for example. And then once you get involved your first year, your second year, by the time your senior year comes around, you could be the president of the organization, which is like the largest organization on campus. And you're developing those leadership skills. So it says a lot to start, if possible, that first year at a 4-year institution from a student experience standpoint.
And then for any of the three of you, so what happens if they do need that time at a smaller school and then are transferring? Marcus, you talked about maybe being behind on some of that. What can they do then to help mitigate that while they're in those community college settings?
We have transfer counselors here at St. Ambrose. So if a student is highly considering starting at the community college, it is okay for you to reach out to whatever institution or college you plan on transferring to 2 years from now. Start partnering with those transfer counselors, making sure that those credits are going to make sense and transfer in for you. So that way, when you do try to complete an undergraduate degree and transfer those credits in, you'll already have partnered with that college really well on what credits will or will not transfer in. So really just knowing what college that your student might plan on transferring to and starting those communications early with any of the admissions counselors, the registrar's office, for what might transfer in and how to efficiently do that in the 2 years or so that you're at that community college.
And one thing we talk about too is that you could go to the community college for 1 year and then transfer. I think there's this automatic assumption that it needs to be 2 years and then 2 years, but to take advantage of some of those many opportunities and spend 3 years at the school that you'll eventually graduate from, you can do a transfer after 1 year as well.
That's good advice.
And in fact, real quick, and in fact, there are some majors, at least at Iowa, where they encourage students to transfer after that first year. So keep that in mind, parents, as well. And if you decide to start at the community college, any science courses, and I mean, Emily and Reg, you can chime in as well, but for at least for University of Iowa, we encourage students to take those courses in sequence. So for example, if you're taking biology 101 at the community college, make sure you're taking biology 102 as well. You don't want to take 101 at community college and then try to take 102 at Iowa. It's going to be 2 totally different types of classes. So keep that in mind.
Sure. Should we move on to cost and financial aid?
Yes.
Sure. Do you want me to go ahead and take that one, Emily?
Of course, Rachel, yeah.
All right. We thought we'd just touch a little bit on cost and financial aid. This could be its own session that we could spend an hour on, but just to touch on some of the differences and what you might be looking at. We do get the question a lot about in-state and out-of-state tuition, and Marcus can touch on this a little bit, but at the private school level with St. Ambrose and Augustana, there really isn't a difference for in-state and out-of-state tuition. It is the same, and our families typically will be looking at similar financial aid packages. So we do offer, as I'm sure that the other schools do, merit-based scholarship. At Augustana, that's between $24,000 and $28,000 based on grades. So that can be a big part of the cost savings right there. And then the other question we get a lot is athletic scholarships. Do schools offer athletic scholarships? And this depends on what division a school is. We are all 3 different divisions, so we can give you a little perspective on that. Augustana is NCAA Division III, so we do not have any athletic scholarships. Many of our students do compete in athletics, but they are there on academic scholarship or a combination of need-based aid. So I know it's different at the other schools. And then the other factor we talk about a lot is the need-based aid, and that's we encourage families to file FAFSA. We'll talk about that a little bit, but the rest of the financial aid packages is typically revolving around the need on the financial aid package. And even if families don't qualify for federal aid or state aid, there can still be institutional aid from especially private schools based on need. So the big thing here is don't assume you know what your financial aid package or cost might look like. Definitely go through that process and see what resources there are before making any decisions and comparing between schools. So that would be the overview from the side of Augustana anyway.
St. Ambrose follows a very similar suit. However, we are NAIA, so between Division II and Division III, it stands for National Association for Intercollegiate Athletics, which means that we can offer athletic scholarships for students. We more heavily award for merit-based. However, we are able to award students as well for sports.
And I should chime in there, there's fine arts scholarships as well, and probably for St. Ambrose too. So if you do have a student who is thinking about being involved in the band or choir or theater, they can audition for fine arts scholarships to add to that merit scholarship as well.
So for the University of Iowa, we're Division I. So the scholarships are through the athletic department. And so which is, for us, is totally separate from admissions. The athletic scholarships are different. And so with that being said, some sports like football will offer full athletic scholarships, but then the non-revenue sports such as track and field, gymnastics, they could offer full scholarships. They can offer partial scholarships. where some students may receive half scholarships or may have their books paid for. So that all depends actually on the individual program. And so if your student is being recruited by one of the sports at actually Iowa State, RUNIC, or all Division I, the athletic scholarships will vary, and it's going to vary based on that individual program. And so I would just recommend stay in contact with the coaches in that particular program, because it depends on how many kids are leaving the program, how many recruits are coming in. So it's a lot to it. Typically, those non-revenue sports will encourage students to be high academic students, because they can actually stack their merit scholarship on top of the athletic scholarship. So keep that in mind as well. And we do offer merit-based scholarships, not as substantial as the private schools. There's a difference between in-state and out-of-state costs, so a little bit under $10,000 for all three regions for in-state, and around $30,000 for out-of-state. And so that's a significant difference. And the merit piece is not, even for out-of-state students, is not a significant amount. So there's a merit piece to it, and as well as it's need-based. So just making sure you get your FAFSA in before December 1st to be in that priority pool.
And Marcus, that's a good point, because FAFSA is opening up on October 1st. The sooner that you complete that, the more likely you are to have that opportunity to get money. I always tell the students it's like filling up a great big room full of money, and people are taking it from the moment that door opens on October 1st, and come the end of May, there's going to be very little money left. So get that in right away. We just saw a presentation from the ICANN at 6 o'clock. If you were able to be with that, attend that tonight. We also have, though, a great working relationship with ICANN, and Lupe Hernandez will sit virtually one-on-one, as will Scott Community College. So if you need help with that FAFSA, we can connect you, send me an email, and I will make sure to give you that information.
Hey, Mary, can I ask a quick question? So just to be clear, FAFSA just starts on October 1st. We can't do anything starting like tonight. We got to wait until the 1st.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. And then we will be having a student information about more information in detail about financial aid and the FAFSA later on in October, and an e-news item will go out this Friday. So make sure that you watch for that.
And a parent asked a good question about GPA thresholds for merit scholarship. I don't know if we want to address that any further. We look typically above a 3.0 based on academic coursework, so we don't look at grades and driver's ed or gym, but if a student has above a 3.0, they're generally going to qualify for some type of merit scholarship, and then the closer they are to 4.0, the higher that scholarship will be.
At the University of Iowa, if a student is submitting their test score this year, it's going to be a 3.7 with a 3.7 and a 30 GPA to be eligible for the $2,500 scholarship. And if the student is not submitting that test score right now, we're actually in the process, our scholarship committee, of making that determination. So hopefully we'll have something on our website here next week in regards to scholarships with no test score.
And St. Ambrose has moved to test optional for fall of 21. So if your student has not been able to take a test or wants to submit their transcripts and apply without a test score, any student that is accepted with a 2.5 GPA or higher will receive a merit-based scholarship on a range similar to what Rachel discussed.
When you talk about testing, I should add, we just got information about the ACT. You can still register for the upcoming ACT test. We have them the second Saturday in October and the fourth Saturday in October. So you can still do that up to October 5th without any late fees.
Perfect. I don't know if you guys, or Rachel, did you want to say something about? Okay, because I was gonna flip the switch to community college and technical and just mention the last dollar scholar.
I'm sorry, can I just ask one question?
Yeah.
So going back to the ACT, that would be recommended that they take their junior year, correct?
Yes.
Ideally, it's always been taken junior year. I think everything's so up in the air this year that there's a lot of seniors that are going to be taking it.
So when you're talking about the dates still available, do you know what other dates will be available for juniors? Because October is not the only option, correct?
That's correct. And you can look on the website, act.org, and I do have that on the Twitter, Career Center Twitter feed. If you'd like to get that, if you don't have that link, go ahead and send me an email and I will send that.
Thank you.
They offer like anywhere from 6 to 8 like test dates throughout the year for your students. So if your student's a sophomore or a junior, like Mary said, look on the ACT website.
Can I just,
Go ahead.
this is Lisa. Can I just offer a lesson learned as a parent perspective? So my daughter is a senior this year, and she was signed up for her ACT last spring of her junior year. She was going to take it in February. And due to COVID and unforeseen circumstances, it kept getting rescheduled. And as soon, there was a big mess at ACT, just so you guys know. I'm hoping that they got it resolved, but I could not get her in as a previously registered student until December. So even though there might be dates out there, just make sure that you can get in and get them signed up as soon as you can, because it's been a little bit of a mess with ACT from a parent perspective.
It has been frustrating, and we've heard that quite a bit on there. Keep in mind, the colleges are going to work with you. I think that all 3 of our representatives can talk about how everybody's a little bit more flexible in what they're having to do with those test scores. And I know that they've mentioned that a couple times, that test optional. So along with their scholarships and financial aid packages.
So if you guys wanted to speak a little bit about Last Dollar Scholar, I just wanted to mention it since we're on the tuition and financial aid. If you have a student who's looking into the technical or community college, there's a lot of certificates that are covered by the Last Dollar Scholar. I don't know all of them off the top of my head, but just Google Last Dollar Scholar. There's a variety of different certificates, some majors that if your student is going into that specific field or area of study, the Last Dollar Scholar covers their tuition for them. So just be mindful of that. If you have a student that's looking into any of those fields, Google that and look at that entire list. It could range from welding to HVAC to, I think there are some nursing on there. It's probably like an RN sort of situation. Do you guys have anything to add about the Last Dollar Scholar? Okay, we will move on.
We wanted to give a little bit of advice throughout the course of your students' high school experience and what you can do to help them build towards big decision that they're going to have to make pretty soon. It looks like most of the parents here are parents of either juniors or seniors. So we can skip through some of the freshman and sophomore things, although I think they're good to touch on. The one I especially want to touch on is the discussion about financing with your student. So we've talked about some of the aspects of scholarship, financial aid, and hopefully these are conversations you're having with your student as well. I know many families come into our office and we start talking about student loan and loan options, and families haven't discussed whether or not they're going to ask that their student take out loan, whether or not they're going to have to take out loan. So these are good things to start discussing with your student. If students are working over the summer, is there an expectation that some of those earnings will be saved and applied towards tuition or applied towards room and board? Those are all good things to start talking about with your student as well. Hopefully you've started to have some of the conversations. It is important. If they're unsure, a great way to really decide what is a comfortable size for them is to start visiting. And we'll talk a little bit about the campus visit, I believe, coming up here. But those are some good questions to ask. What size are they comfortable in? What location? How far from home? And really start to research those options with your student. So by the time they're a junior, you can focus on things like signing up for mail. Because students aren't taking the ACT or SAT as much this year, You aren't probably getting as much automatic mail as you would some years. So if there are schools that are slightly interesting, get on board on their web and start signing up for information, and you'll find there are in terms of visits, in terms of programming, and you might have to be a little proactive in getting those information. Start working with them even during junior year to attend virtual information sessions. We have some great opportunities this year. COVID has really recreated the college search for students, and everybody is offering virtual sessions, sessions on majors, programs, on honors colleges, on athletics. So take advantage of that and jump on with your student to really get some good information from schools before you start going out and doing in-person visits.
Rachel, can I interrupt here real quick? Because I can't tell you parents how many colleges that I get. I think right now all of my emails pretty much are wading through the college information that I'm getting, which I try and put on the Career Center website, but all of our virtual visits are on the Career Center's webpage. And we have that in a calendar so students can sign up for those during the day. They have those talks. We just have today or tomorrow, we have a couple of colleges that are coming in. So make sure that you're looking at that college. Freshmen, sophomores, we don't usually have them, but because of the online, we are allowing them because it's online, so they can do that when they want to. So that works out really well with that. We also, and you all are the first ones to hear about this, have a new program called Zello. Zello is going to be a great tool for your students. They'll be able to look at a wide variety of colleges, and they can share that information with you. So in the next month, we'll have some information coming out to the students, but if you'd like to have your students start that program now, they can come in and see me, and we can go over the program, and they can get started right now.
So your students have some really incredible resources through the high school that not every school is able to offer. So hopefully you can take advantage and use that as a point of focus for your students' college search and be able to really jump in there, especially juniors, as they start to really look ahead and see what that might look like. So I think Marcus, are you talking, or Emily, I think is talking next about specifically the senior year and some of the things senior parents should be focused on as well.
Definitely. Thank you, Rachel. So yeah, the big October 1st date, filing your FAFSA. We already chatted about it, but if you're unfamiliar with what it is the free application for federal student aid. So it will open on October 1st, and I know Mary mentioned that Lupe will be working with you guys, Iowa College Access Network, helping file FAFSAs, ask any questions. Utilize your admissions counselors as well, so if you have a question, feel free to bounce it off of me or Rachel or Marcus. If you just have a quick question, we all know the financial aid process pretty well. It'll allow you to mark up to 10 schools that you're interested in. So do take advantage of that, but just be mindful that you are going to get then 8, 9, 10 financial aid packages back from all those schools, lots of communication from all those schools. So just be mindful of the ones that you're adding, but it is free to do so. So it's just more knowledge for you and your student. And then start encouraging your student to be visiting campus if COVID-19 allows. So I know some campuses are allowing in-person visits, but like Rachel said, there are so many virtual visits now. So take advantage of that. You guys have the luxury of being able to kind of browse all of that online. Rachel, did you want to add something?
Oh, I was just going to mention that even if you can't visit in person or you're not comfortable, a lot of schools are also doing driving tours, which is new. So if you want to take some time to drive with your student around to different campuses, that might be a fun way to really see the campus, see the students there, if you're not comfortable with getting out and taking a one-on-one tour.
Love that. Thank you. It'll basically help you narrow down your choices, or at least expose your student to the university itself. So start doing all of that research, start visiting in whatever capacity that you can or that you're comfortable with. And then check admissions requirements. So either while you're there, St. Ambrose with individual visits, we offer an individual meeting with an admissions counselor so you can go over admissions requirements, the specific admissions process and financial aid specific to your student and your family. But those are all good things to start connecting with an admissions counselor on as you start going through this process. So just be sure that you're asking those questions along the way. And then of course, checking in with your high school counselor, hi Mary, and make sure that you are sending your transcripts to the schools that you're interested in. Looks like this year, as long as you send your transcripts and you meet the qualifications for most schools, there is that test optional admission. So you can at least get your student's admissions process started. I'm not sure how University of Iowa and Augustana work, but with St. Ambrose, if your student applies and gets admitted without a supplemental test score, they can always submit that later. And if it changes their academic scholarship or their merit-based scholarship, we will change that. So it wouldn't be one of those things where your student would be locked into a test optional admission once they're through the process. They can always supplement that later. And then just ask questions. My first year in admissions, I learned all this stuff. So you guys are also trying to learn all that stuff right now. So ask questions. Your admissions counselor, all three of us are here to just kind of help with that. So even if your student doesn't know what they're supposed to be doing next, just say, hi, what should I be doing next? And we as your admissions counselors will really help with that next step. And then will help you navigate your college search as well. So just make sure that, Rachel will kind of get into how to have those conversations with your student and how to help them through the college process. Just make sure that you're being that person for your student. The high school counselor will also help you navigate your college search. So if you have any questions, like Mary said, she's trying to get all those virtual visits up and running. A lot of times she has that connection to admissions counselors at all the universities and colleges that your student might be looking at. So definitely utilize her. She is an important asset at your high school. Next, Marcus will kind of talk about what to focus on in the spring.
So yes, after going home for Thanksgiving, getting the turkey and enjoying family over the Christmas break, get tuned up and get ready for the spring, where it's an important critical time to make a decision of what institution you attend for the next 4 years or so. And so most students will, or some students will have already visited campus in some form or fashion. Typically colleges and universities will offer what we call like admitted student days. So typically colleges will offer more of a general overview presentation of their institution in the fall, just to kind of get students acclimated to their institution or campus. But then accepted student days or admitted student days are a little bit more tailored to the students' specific needs or interests. And so I encourage all families to definitely take advantage of those days. You will have the opportunity to hear more from faculty, academic programs, student organizations, like I said, a little bit more in-depth, specialized event. And so that is available. I know for smaller schools, you typically will offer overnight stays as well as visiting classes. Typically at Iowa State, I'm not 100% sure with UNI, it is tough to get in, to sit in on a class just because of the volume, trying to control the volume. So keep that in mind, where institutions are also wanting to impress upon, right, students to attend their institution for the fall. One critical piece, I won't spend too much time on it, is I know Emily touched on it, just, your financial aid packages. Definitely talk it over with your student and be in contact, right, with Lupe or anyone within the financial aid or admissions office at that institution, right? Each school has some type of appeal process. So if parent, maybe income drop, loss of job, you can file for a special circumstance, and the financial aid office will do a review, based off of your individual unique circumstance and make a determination from there. But I highly encourage you to have your student with you. If you're calling the financial aid, or better yet, have your student call the financial aid office, and you can sit next to them, guiding them through that process, right? So that gets them early on to start being a little bit more proactive in the different processes. And so that is something I encourage families to do. Also, research loans and external scholarships. There's a ton of scholarships out there. I mean, you have an awesome person with Mary who may know about the local scholarships or regional, even national scholarships that pertains to high school students. And typically you get those letters of recommendations turned in as well. And so focus on that during the spring. And then of course you make that final decision, right? Typically May 1st it's a quote unquote national acceptance deadline or what have you. And so typically schools, once you make a commitment by that date, check with that each individual school, because it could vary. And most likely your housing deposit will be required at that time. And accept and deny any loans that you want to accept or want to deny. A lot of times, I know most financial aid offices, if they see that a student does not have to take out the maximum amount of loans, they will, counsel you on that and say, hey, you may only need to take out $2,000 worth of loan as opposed to $5,500 worth of loan. So keep that in mind. And then if you decide on an institution, let the other institutions know you're no longer interested. And so then that way, it can be via email, phone call, or what have you. So just in a nutshell, those are the 4 points to look out for in the spring.
Thanks. We wanted to go over just some general support items, and some of these hopefully you've already started to implement, but one thing that's important is to really open that door to discussion with your student and make that ongoing. Certainly it's not a one-time conversation about what they're interested in, but anytime you're in the car or you have a chance to make it a little bit special by taking them out for coffee or going shopping, if that's what it takes, those are the times that they open up and really helps them talk through some things. So I know some students are better at talking about it than others, and some students are just really overwhelmed, and we totally understand that. But if you can get them to open up a little bit, it might really help get some insight into what they're thinking, which may or may not be what you think they're thinking. So we know it's a tricky time, and just want to encourage you to continue to get them to open up there. And then make finances a part of that discussion. So if you have limitations, don't be afraid to talk to your student about those. And while we hope everybody is open-minded about cost until they get that financial aid package, we understand, and students should understand if there are limitations that the family has, and things that you need to lay out ahead of time so they don't get expectations that can't be met. And then Marcus touched on this too, but let them drive the process. Be there to encourage, to ask questions, but let them call the admissions office. Let them fill out some of the forms. Every year we get applications that are filled out by parents, which is kind of crazy. It has to really be on them. It has to really be their decision and their process. So if you can let them take ownership of a lot of that, that's just our advice, to really let them do that. They can schedule visits. So much of this is online now, so it's really giving them some additional opportunities to take the lead there. And then if you do want to jump in a little bit more, social media is a great place. Oftentimes schools will have social media groups just for parents for the class of whatever is your student's class. And even if a student isn't committed, they've just maybe applied to a school, you can jump on social media and get a lot of questions answered. Make sure you're not missing next steps. Make sure you're not missing emails that are coming out. So that can be a great way for parents to connect on their own and let the students drive the admissions process from their perspective. Would you guys add anything to that?
No, that was pretty comprehensive. Thank you, Rachel.
I think Marcus has some on the next slide. Yep.
But yeah, to echo what Marcus said on the last slide, definitely let us know when you've decided. Don't ghost us. Don't let your student ghost us.
And there's just a couple more points. I know we're running short on time. Just be a partner in the process, kind of what Rachel alluded to. The two of you or the three of you, the parents and the child, you may have different strengths. So for example, if your child is a huge organizer and they just love to just organize different things, encourage them to go ahead and set up your Excel sheet and list out all your different schools, right? Or mom or dad, you may be the one that's the organizer, and so you may take on that role a little bit more, but also letting the child have some skin in the game as well. And so just being a partner in the process, and just allow your students to kind of create their own opinion. So basically what this means is, encourage your students to research their school, and just be honest, being frank. Some students look at Iowa. I ask this all the time with students, hey, why are you interested in Iowa? Football, that's the word that comes out, is football. And so I encourage students to dig in a little bit more, into the University of Iowa to understand why you would want to attend our institution, because it's going to be beneficial to you and the institution, right? We don't want you, my philosophy is I recruit to retain, meaning that I really want students to attend Iowa who has some understanding of our institution outside of sports, right? We don't want you to get here and then after the first semester you leave because it's not what you thought it was, right? So it all goes back to, encouraging your student to visit campus, attend those big visit days and do a little bit of research, right? And so then they can create their own opinion about that particular institution. Iowa football. And so, and also incorporate some fun into the process. This is the senior year is going to be a very stressful time, for your students. And so, you want to carve out maybe 30 minutes, an hour a week, just to do something fun, maybe get some ice cream together, go bowling, whatever, your child, right? What they like to do for fun, and just to kind of get their mind off of this whole college process, right? I feel like that would help balance things out a little bit. And so just focus on something else other than the process, and then just offer unconditional support and encouragement. And it could be times where you're maybe frustrated or what have you, but try not to let that show too much, because again, this is a stressful time for that particular student, and with the addition of COVID and adds more stress. And so just kind of be that cheerleader for your student, really encourage them. It's okay to give them nudges, right? Sometimes we have to give student nudges to get things complete or to meet deadlines. That is totally fine as well, but just continue to show that support, that you're in their corner and you're going to help them, get through this process. And the kind of what I alluded to earlier, really just have students to be a little bit proactive and making those phone calls or sending out those emails. It is okay to be next to them while they're making these phone calls if they're super nervous. I don't necessarily have a problem if a parent calls in with a question. That's totally fine. But at the same time, I love to hear a student call in and they may be a little bit nervous, but they're making that effort, right, to ask those questions, because I feel like it's going to help them as they matriculate through college to be a little bit more assertive. So those are just a couple of points of advice.
Well, I think that wraps up the formal presentation part of it, unless there was anything that either of you wanted to add, Rachel or Marcus.
No, just that I hope people will reach out if they have questions, and we'd be happy to answer those, even if they're from a general perspective. If your student doesn't know where they're looking yet, we would be happy to guide them along the way, certainly.
Can I add one thing? It's kind of to the point I just made, but I just want to emphasize, at least for like the larger schools, students who tend to leave at least the University of Iowa is due to like stress and anxiety. And from the research that's been collected from our faculty, are the students who just don't know how to navigate the system, right? And to be assertive and to ask help. We had one of our faculty members in the College of Business conduct research with employers, and they're finding out more parents are starting to show up with their child to the interview, and these are students who graduated from college, and that does not bode well for that student, right? And so basically what I'm trying to say is it's okay for them to fail, right? You go through that process now in high school, not necessarily fail a class, or maybe they're trying to do something they didn't succeed. It helps them to learn how to overcome adversity, because once they get to college, they're going to deal with some adversity in some form or fashion. And so if students are able to kind of overcome that adversity and know where to go to get the support and know the resources on campus, they tend to be more successful. So encourage your students to be assertive now. I think it will help them as they matriculate through college.
I love that, Marcus. That was going to be my advice. One of the questions that we had from Mary was, what is some advice that you would give your student or the parent for their student now? And mine in the back of my head was, don't wait until they get to college to let them be independent. Like, start that now while they're in high school. Let them make their decisions and work through their homework on their own and ask questions and reach out to their teachers on their own. It sets the precedent moving forward on how they're going to make those decisions. Are they going to look over their shoulder and make sure that they're saying the right thing, or are they going to be making those decisions and confident in those decisions when they go off to XYZ institution? So it starts now. It starts yesterday, honestly. So definitely make sure. That's one thing that my parents did a lot for me, was let me be independent in high school. And that's what made me successful in college. So that was my piece of advice.
If we're giving advice, my piece that we had talked about that question earlier was to encourage your students to step outside their comfort zone. That's part of the fun of college, is to try new things. And hopefully it'll give students the opportunity to have the confidence to do that if they do some of these things that Emily and Marcus talked about as well. But college is, it's a stressful year trying to figure out where they feel most comfortable and where they go. But gosh, they're getting ready to have 4 of the best years of their life. And I'm sure they'll be set up for that with the strong foundation that you all are giving them. And the fact that you even are here tonight shows that you really want the best for them. And so it will be a fabulous 4 years that they'll be in for. So Mary did ask about the key considerations for comparing online classes versus in-person models forward. We did talk about this. The panel had a discussion about this afternoon, and that's tricky because we're all learning. When you consider most of us have only been offering online classes for 2 halves of semesters, I'm not sure we have the answer to that question. But I can say, you know, as far as Augustana, we're learning a lot. The online classes we're offering this fall are very different from the online classes we offered last spring. Our faculty spent the majority of the summer studying how to be effective mentors online. So I think some of the same things that make in-person classes good, that mentorship, that care that they have for the students, that's going to help them in terms of offering online classes. But I don't know that there's a formula for comparing. It just depends on what your student is comfortable with, and you can look at percentages of which college is offering what percentage of their classes online versus in person. And those may vary by semester. There's just a lot of uncertainty going forward. So I don't know, Marcus or Emily, if you would add anything to that.
No, pretty much same for St. Ambrose. I know that if we have a hands-on class, especially with the health sciences, we do try to get them in the lab as much as possible in smaller groups. So for the hands-on, for the things that experiential learning, we're still trying to get them in the classroom in some capacity. But yeah, to compare online and in person right now, it is such a weird time. So we're all kind of working through that. Marcus, did you want to add something?
Just from feedback from students or some for faculty, I know students who tend to be a little bit more independent and self-motivated tend to do much better on online classes than students who are not motivated. So that is, I know that's one little piece that I've heard where some students, they need to be in class to kind of be motivated to do something. It forces them to get up and go, where online classes, you can just roll out of bed and just turn on your computer and chime in. So if you have a student who's self-motivated, you know, and they don't mind, you know, trying to gather information on their own through the video and not worrying about talking with faculty in person, then I think it's okay. But for students who really need to be in classroom and need to be motivated and supported, I feel like they need to be in person. Right now, Iowa, unfortunately, 75% are online and 25% are in person. So.
Perfect. Rachel, Marcus, Emily, thank you so much for coming. I do want to leave you all with one thought that we didn't talk about tonight, and something that I talked to all of our students in. Know yourself and look at the careers and start getting ideas of what it is that you're wanting to do, because that's going to help make you successful in college. If you know what you're looking at, or at least your strengths, what are you good at? Those are going to help you in the long run in your college career. All right, thank you again, everybody, for coming. We'll have something again next month, and that'll be out in the e-news. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Mary.
Thank you. Thank you,
Bye.
everyone.
Bye.
Thank you, Mary.